Welcome here. I'm delighted to see so many here today about the UN Talks seminar series. This is a seminar series that is co-hosted by UNDP Sweden and the Dag Hammarskjöld Foundation. And this is actually the first one after the COVID period.
Fellow Ambazonian, as unadan here, this one a United Nations Forum for Discussion, very important one for debate and discussion on issues that we matter. Our Ambazonian Governing Council mission for Sweden, he get a member we participate for we and he ask some question them, and we then bring and make gonna also get a feedback and make gonna also get the forum on a listen for which we then talk.
Yes, my name is Julious. I'm representing an organization here in Sweden. I have a few questions for the panelists. The first question is there a mechanism that the UN can use to overcome the state sovereignty in most conflict areas that the state doesn't want the UN to come in because they consider it as internal affair? I would take an example from my country of origin, Cameroon. We have an armed conflict going there for the past 5 years, and nobody wants to come in because it's been the government wanted to be hidden and to be considered as internal affair. And most effort, they always use the principle of sovereignty to evade international community. How can you go about that? My second question also go with the responsibility to protect. It's rarely evoked in most cases. Why is that? Thank you.
Thank you. I think we will do with those questions because they will even take us beyond time. I would also like to say to our listeners and viewers, participants on the web, that only because we have to end here, it doesn't mean that you can't send in questions that we will bring into our work and forward where they should go. So there is a limit in time, but the work continues after this meeting. So maybe I start with you, Kani, and the question raised by my hearing was not good enough, but from the Association of Newcomers with Disabilities and our friend there, I think the question asked is, how can UN continue to engage in the most difficult situation while preserving some kind of principled leadership, integrity, and autonomy? And you addressed it a little bit before, but we had a discussion this morning where we referred to also that there are bilateral processes whereby governments are recognized or not, but there are also situations where the UN have to work in situations where government is more or less compromised and still maintain the principles of the Charter and other norms and standards. So would you like to say something about that, Kani?
Thank you, Per. Maybe let me also say thank you, Leonard, for those reflections. Really very much agree with that work and that perspective on ownership. Let me say in situations, whether in Cameroon or other locations, now the UN is a body of member states. So it is the Charter of the UN is very much based on recognizing state sovereignty. At the same time, we're very much, if you look at both the UN Charter and the Geneva Conventions, the set of humanitarian principles that came out of that process of the scourge of war was indeed that not just the UN, but the partners, and with the partners of the UN, one should be able to have access to go in where people are suffering and need that support. Now, we can't send in people or support people where there is a active resistance and engagement to keep us out. At the end of the day, we cannot walk into countries. We still need, if there's a sovereign authority, we still need to be able to get that authority to allow us access. The world needs visas to go into many places. And so the issue of coming in, we are not a military force. We do not invade. So it is a matter of engaging constantly, day by day. I think much of the world does not see the everyday difficult conversations that happen in various countries, but also globally and regionally, trying to access areas where people would absolutely want to see us there. And then that brings in the responsibility to protect clause. Now there it's interesting. If the Security Council cannot agree in it, the R2P can be taken to the General Assembly. But it is something that you are very right, that has been rarely used, because just think, you have 193 nations that have to agree to this. And today you can see the state of nations, if I might call it that, which makes it very difficult to activate what I find is one of the most powerful instruments, which is the responsibility to protect. Now, that doesn't mean we should give up on it or stop trying. So you see our SG constantly, and just because he's not always on the news talking about the responsibility to protect and the instrument does not mean that he or his predecessors, if I think of the second Secretary General of the UN from Sweden, this was, I think, foremost in his mind, and he probably lost his life for it. But this, I think, is the most powerful place to have those debates and negotiations, and we will keep going on to try and get to those populations that need us most.
Thank you, Kenny. And if I may just add on to you before I turn to the others, Lynn's question, which is very pertinent, that while we speak about coordinated and integrated approaches, how do we include civil society and the small scale initiative without fragmenting and diluting the impact, but rather mustering and combining forces? And could you speak to an example whereby UN is actually doing that?
Well, let me say on that, and thank you for that set of issues, very quickly to say that we have a range of instruments that we don't always put in place early enough. And I think the ability to adapt very quickly and use a mix of instruments. So with small organizations, one does not always have to go through those multiple steps and procedures to get to them. I am very much as I said before, of the view that people and those small organizations who live and breathe and wake up every day in those situations know their situations best. And if there's a way in which we can get to them a certain set of, whether it's specific digital and other tools that they've been asking us for in these situations, information that they may need, but very often direct cash that they know what to do with, whether it's to individuals and households through a basic income instrument, or through revolving grants where you can set up your businesses and get on with your lives. I think we've got to step back from sometimes what has become the over architecture of some of these processes. I'm very much, when I see what's going on in a Myanmar and Afghanistan, and where we are seeing the light now, look at those local markets for food that have taken off. Look at the 55,000 micro businesses that are owned and run by women, who are now employing 5 to 7 other women, who go back to a household with income on average, a 10 to 12 person household. That to me is what has generated local economic activity. And with that, that sense again that they're in control of their lives and are defining their futures. Now that is still within a certain context, doesn't mean that we shouldn't be working every day to open up that space on their rights, their right to learn, and the right to be also protected. So it's a matter of working at all these levels, but it's not for the lack of instruments or the lack of ingenuity. I think that political commitment to use the whole range of tools we have with us is the critical path we've got to follow at this time.